confronting authors with real questions about the writing process, the difficult and disheartening publishing industry, and why anyone would choose to torture themselves in the world of writing. This is the Literally Podcast with your host, writer, runner, and the literary voice of Ogden, Utah, Case Johnston. Exposing literature, the authors, the business, the process. The Literally Podcast.
This is Case Johnston. This is the Literally Podcast. We're broadcasting from my home in Ogden, Utah. Today, our guest is Teresita Dovalpage, and we're going to talk about her new book from Soho Crime titled Death Comes In Through the Kitchen. Teresa was born in Havana, Cuba in 1966. She earned her BA in English Literature and MA in Spanish Literature at the University of Havana and her PhD in Latin American Literature at the University of New Mexico. She is the author of 12 other works of fiction and 3 plays and is the winner of the Rincón de Victoria Award and finalist for the Heralde Award. She lives in New Mexico, which is very close to us. She's on our same time zone, which is fabulous. And what's the weather like in New Mexico today? Is it like...
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Actually, we're starting spring finally.
Yeah, same with us. I think we probably get the same, pretty close to the same weather until the summer when you guys get a little bit hotter than we do up here in Utah. Yes, we had a nice 65 degree day, and I'd take that all year if I could. So Teresa is going to start a reading from her book, and since the book is a mystery novel set in Havana, Cuba, and she can't read from the end of it because obviously that would give everything away. And so she's going to read from the beginning to get us started on where this whole crime and mystery begins. So go for it, Teresa.
Okay, perfect. So I will start with the first chapter, and it's called Meranga Puffs. So the Cuban customs officer lifted an eyebrow at the bridal gown, a white satin bodice with tulle appliques, sheer sleeves, and a 2-foot train, and took a long, suspicious look at the couple. The woman was a tall blonde in her 40s who wore a teal brown skirt, a beige cotton blouse, turquoise-studded cowgirl boots, and a brittle smile. The man, in jeans and a San Diego Padres t-shirt, was a few years younger and a few inches shorter. His hands shook when he opened his passport to the picture page. "Are you getting married here?" the officer asked. The woman's pale cheeks tinted with a soft blush. "Yes," she said, smiling at the wedding dress that was carefully wrapped in a plastic bag. "To him?" The officer pointed to her companion with a hint of mistrust in his voice. That was unusual. 2 Americans coming all the way to Havana to get hitched. But both hurried to correct him, almost at the same time. No, we are just friends. I am the one getting married," the woman explained, to a Cuban. "I see." The customs officer reconsidered his initial decision to send the couple over to security. He waved the woman away after taking a cursory look at her passport, which he didn't stamp. "Welcome to Cuba. Thanks, compañero." She walked away with her face still flushed. The man, whose passport read Matthew Sullivan, waited nervously, while the compañero inspected his backpack. The unopened Hugo Boss gift set that contained a watch, a pair of sunglasses, and 3 red monogram boxer shorts made the officer snicker. "Are they yours?" "Yes, sir." When he was finally told to go ahead, Matt let out a sigh of relief and hurried to meet Anne in the waiting room. In a corner, after looking around like co-conspirators, they exchanged items quickly. Matt cradled the wedding dress in his arms and took the Hugo Boss set. "Well, that was easy enough," she said. Matt didn't understand the need to lie. But Anne had insisted, saying that they would have to offer detailed explanations for gender-swapped gifts. He had deferred to her. Having traveled the island 7 times, she was the expert on Cuban affairs. "Why didn't that guy stamp our passports?" Matt asked. "I thought we would have to ask him not to do it." "I guess it's a courtesy to good Americans like us who come here despite the embargo," Anne answered, shrugging. "For whatever reason, I've never had mine stamped, and I'm not asking why." They picked up their luggage, one big, heavy suitcase for him and 2 medium-sized ones for her, and went outside the building to the airport parking lot, where a small crowd of nationals had been awaiting the arrival of the Aeromexico flight. A young, wiry man stepped out of the group and ran to hug him. "Johnny, my love! Mamita!" There was a loud smooshing sound. She handed him the Hugo Boss set. "Cool." Matt stood outside, searching the crowd for Yarmila, his Cuban fiancée, but he couldn't find her. He walked back to the airport building, careful not to stumble over the gowns train, and ignoring the curious glances that followed him. A security guard stopped him at the door. "Only people who are traveling today can come in," he said. "But I was just in there. So, you are out now." Matt turned around. The crowd had dispersed. Johnny and Anne were still kissing, but Yarmila was nowhere to be found. He made several unsuccessful attempts to call her apartment from a payphone. The phone rang without response. He asked the security guards if they had seen a pretty young woman with brown eyes and dark hair. They chuckled and told him that they had seen dozens of them. An hour slipped by. By then, Matt's hands were shaking so much that the gown stool appliques fluttered like sick toes. "I bet Yarmila just got tired of waiting," Johnny said. "She must be back home now." It made sense, sort of. The plane had been delayed during a stopover at Monterrey and arrived at 2:15 instead of 1 o'clock. But Yarmila could have stayed a little longer, Matt thought. He could have waited for her an entire day, if necessary. "If Yarmi's home, why isn't she answering any calls?" he asked, despondent. "Her phone may be out of order," Johnny said. "This is Cuba. Things get broken all the time." "But don't sweat it, man." Johnny looked around, worried. "Sorry, but we have to go now. We've been here too long, and I don't want the cops coming and asking questions. I'll drop you off at her place." Matt shook his head. "We agreed to meet at the airport," he said. "That was the plan. You guys can go ahead." "We aren't leaving you alone," Aunt protested. "I'll find a taxi later." "Take it easy, Yuma." Johnny put a reassuring hand on Matt's shoulder. "Remember, you are in Havana. Here, plans don't always pan out." Yuma, Yarmila had explained to Matt, was a term that younger Cubans used when referring to Americans. It didn't have the pejorative connotation that Yankee had, like in Yankees Go Home. It was almost affectionate, though it sounded odd to him. Matt gave up and followed the couple, rolling the big suitcase along the uneven sidewalk and holding the bridal gown protectively against his chest. Outside the airport premises, scruffy-looking woman tried to sell them a bunch of withered marigolds. Matt recalled at the sight of the flowers. Mexican called them cempasúchil and placed them on their deceased relatives' graves on the Day of the Dead. "It's for the orishas," the woman insisted in a husky voice. "They will make your stay pleasant and safe." They walked away. Much later, Matt could regret not having made an offering to the orishas, whatever they were. So this is the beginning of the first chapter.
Yeah, and it's a great. Well, obviously with this book, there are a lot of reasons why you picked it, right, to read.
Yeah, well, it's just to set up the the novel, no? So people know how it starts. It's kind of difficult for a mystery novel to start reading in the middle, no? Describe, like what happened before and who are these people.
Yeah, absolutely. So are we able to talk about what happens at the end of the first chapter? Do you want to go that far or?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Sure,
Good,
we can talk up to the middle, I would
Up to the
say.
middle. Okay, yeah, right. Yeah, I would say up to the 57th percentile is probably where we could talk. And then things turn the readers on their heads a little bit, which is really, really cool. Yeah, so at the end of this chapter, Matt finds that Armila dies or is dead. He finds her in her bathtub under running water as soon as he gets to her apartment. And this is where the crime has begun. So looking at that first chapter in a book like this, and I want to say this, and this is hard because I don't want to give anything away, because there is stuff in the first chapter that informs a lot of other things. How much within that first chapter did you know you were going to put into the book like immediately? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought of this first chapter as foreshadowing of what Matt's experience in Cuba is. He goes to Cuba hoping to find first, his girlfriend at the airport, and that doesn't happen. He trusts the people that he meets all the time, and that doesn't always turn out to be a wise move. So in a way, the first chapter foreshadows the rest of the novel. He expects something and something totally different happens.
Yeah. Coming in through, I think it does a lot of that in that first chapter, but also we get a lot of, for those of us who've never been to Cuba, I think that the first chapter gives us a really, really quick introduction into the fact that we are no longer in the United States, or we are now in a different country that we're not used to.
Yeah, I tried to do that, describing the ride from the airport to Havana, which I didn't read because it was a little later, but I tried to be as specific as I could. I even called my mother, she still lives in Havana, and said, could you take a taxi to the airport, and when you come back, and you tell me exactly what you are seeing, because I don't remember, I haven't been there in many years. And of course I can use Google Earth and all that, but I asked her to go on return, and she told me about los camellos, the camels, the bus stops full of his people, and the almendrones. So I tried to put as much as possible of real information in case people don't like it too much as a mystery novel, at least they could use it as a travel book. That's what in Havana, los almendrones, y el paladar, and the paladares that I mentioned, the one that I mentioned in particular is real. So I changed the name a little bit, La Guarida instead of El Refugio, but it is a real paladar and the decorations are actually true.
Yeah, that is really cool, and it worked great as a crime mystery novel. So I mean, well, that's for sure. And secondly, yeah, it would work as a travel book now, especially like I think a lot of the little things of like what to expect. Maybe like if you've never been to Cuba before, which of course Brandon and I have never been to Cuba before, and right from the get go, we find out that this is somewhere new. This is somewhere that. The laws of nature are going to be different right out of the get-go.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that we have two currencies. A friend of mine just read the book and she was going to Cuba and she didn't know because she just bought the ticket on her own. She was going to go on a cruise and she didn't know that there were two currencies, the CUCs and the peso. So she said, oh, well, when I read your book, I was more prepared for the shock of having to exchange dollars for CUCs and then not being able to use CUCs everywhere because in some places they only accepted pesos. So I said, well, okay, that was good. And then, of course, the recipes. Okay, that was the fun part of writing this book, incorporating la comida. So if you want, we can talk about that later.
Please.
That was a really fun part for me.
Yeah, please tell us about it. It really is throughout the book. Just as a primer, there are recipes written on a blog page from Yarmila, who's the young woman who got murdered. And it really is a fun, little fun excerpts that take you through it and give her voice kind of throughout the entire book. And I'm not going to say anything else. But
Case, we're not going to be able to do a podcast without a book that includes recipes from now on.
I know.
Because that's the third one.
It's really good. No, tell us about the food. Tell us about writing about the food, and tell us where you came up with that. I would love to hear where that came from. And
well, the food came first, actually, before the idea for the mystery novel. Because I was talking to my mother, and she said, "Tú sabes que all these recipes that your grandma used to prepare, and they are going to be lost because, well, my grandma already passed away. What are we going to do? I cannot write a cookbook because nobody's going to buy a cookbook that I write. We're going to say, you don't even know how to cook, Anita. You don't even cook for your husband very well. ¿Qué cookbook ni qué libro de cocina?" Pero entonces dice, well, why don't you try to insert some of them, sneak them in one of your novels? I said, está bueno, let me think about that. So that conversation was around 2 years ago. But when I started writing the mystery, there was a problem that, well, one of the main characters is dead at the beginning. How do I bring her back? Because Yarmila is actually an important part of Matt's experience in Cuba. So how do I said, that's where I can put the recipes. I can make her like a food blogger, which is something cool anyway, and have the recipes inserted, as my mother asked me, into the book. My mother didn't think it was going to be a mystery. She said, híjole, sangre, comida, blood and food, that doesn't sound too good. Pero bueno, everything cannot be perfect. No, todo no puede ser perfecto. And that's how it came to be a culinary mystery. Let me tell you, Chico, that I didn't even know that was a genre.
Yeah.
Culinary mystery. I thought there were mysteries, were just mysteries. I said, no, eso es un misterio culinario. Y yo, ay, qué bueno, that's nice to know. Yeah. So that's how the food got into the mystery.
So it did start with the food. All of this started with the food.
Yeah, it can. And I took the time to prepare most of the recipes, except 2 or 3 that were too complicated. Well, caldosa, I couldn't... Yeah. Find all the ingredients and put all of them together. That was too difficult. But most of them, I prepared them in my house. Mm-hmm. My husband and I, el viejo y yo, we gained like 3 pounds through the process of writing the book, because I thought everything, okay, let's try this with manteca. Some of them called for manteca. Manteca is lard. And no aceite de oliva, no substitutions with healthy olive oil, right. La manteca. So whenever we have manteca, that was good. Let me tell you, lard is good.
Yeah, no, lard is good. I know that my grandma cooked with lard. Lots of lard.
Sí, con manteca?
Yeah, and oh my gosh, and nothing tastes the same even though we cook it the same. You know, the same process,
exactly.
No matter what it is. That lard that she would use and then collect and put back into a Crisco jar that was about this big and then use it again. That's fantastic. So when you talked about lard in the book, I was like, oh, it's been a long time since I've had it, probably the late 90s, but it makes a huge difference.
That culinary mystery, that should be a subgenre way bigger than it is. Whatever, how many books are in that? It should be huge. I love that.
Well, apparently there are many. After we started the promotion, I think I discovered that, yes, that is indeed a subgenre, and there are many books that include, many mysteries that include somehow recipes or food. I was, bueno.
Huh. I didn't know. I mean, and honestly, reading mystery and crime is really a new genre to me as a reader. I mean, if for those listening, Teresa's book, I would classify it as literary fiction because of the writing, and then crime and mystery because of the plot. So I would say that the writing itself is very literary in the sense that it's so real. The characters are extremely well developed. The writing's beautiful, but then the plot line is very much mystery crime, which is so
well, gracias.
Yeah. And so I enjoyed it, and I was reading it throughout. And I'm the slowest reader in the world. I'm so slow. My wife can read a book in a day, and it takes me 2 or 3 weeks to read a book. And so every day I'd read, and she said, you know, you're getting through that one really fast. And I said, I really am. I really am. It's that good. I've got to find this out. So it goes back to this idea of, so I had a real question of when it comes to the recipes and the food. So, and you speak in the way that a lot of this, you called your mom to make sure you got things right. And of course you were born in Cuba. And then on Yarmila's blog, food blog, there are 3 or 4 or 5 people that continually respond back to her. And they're all from the States, aren't they? I mean, yeah. And do you see yourself as any of those one particular responders, or would you say personally that you're all of them in one way or another?
Well, one of them, Taustonia, is a friend of mine.
Oh,
Tanya,
okay, yeah.
House where I used to live, and I took all the things that Tanya says, Taustonia says in the novel, are things that my friend Tanya talks about. She loves Chile because, in northern New Mexico, where I used to live in Taos, Chile, no, pues todo el tiempo, we put Chile in everything. And she was the one who said, we put even Chile in the dessert and this and that, and the Zinfandel and the 7 deadly things, the name of the wine, all that came from Tanya. So I just sent her the book and I said, see, if you read it, you will find yourself there. And all the other commentators in the blog are taken from people that I know or things that I have heard. Let's put that here.
Yeah. And it's really great how there were, to me, it seemed there were 2 books going on. One was happening with this blog, and we're creating this timeline throughout that. And then the other, the main plot line is happening at the same time, and they both had all these different voices. And they were really, these recipes and the blog recipes were really nice breaks in the story, and we get to hear from Yarmila. No, so the food is fantastic, the food in itself has a big twist to it, and I don't want to reveal that twist about what the food does to the whole novel, because it really does. It plays a huge part in the entire novel.
Food comes alive.
Food, it says so much.
La comida está viva.
Está viva.
That's kind of what my mother said.
Yeah.
La comida está viva. She can read English, even she doesn't speak very well. And when she read the first copy, she said exactly what Brandon just said. Food is alive in the book. Qué bueno.
Yeah, it's a character of it in its own. Yeah, and it does, and it plays so much. So how long has it been since you've been to Cuba, and when did you leave?
I left in 96.
Okay.
So it has been quite a long time. But I keep in touch with, my mother, she still is there, and my friends, I have lots of friends there. So I kind of try to keep in touch with what's going on and things. I'm not always very informed, but just in the smaller scale of the gossip from my friends and los amigos y eso. And
Yeah. How would you say, like, because the time period you write in here is before 2003-ish. How would you say it's changed? Would the country be the same now to visit, obviously, as it was then?
But there is more access to internet now. People could use their cell phone better, so sure. And things have changed a little bit, I believe. I want to go. I've been thinking about going back maybe this year, and then I'll find out exactly how much has changed, because it's difficult to get an idea just by what people tell you, what you read online. But it seems that there is a certain like more openings, and people are less afraid to speak. So I would like to go and find out by myself how different it is from the time I was there and from 2003. Yeah,
and the book has a big part of the book is people's portrayals of what Cuba is, and what are they trying to, how are they trying to define Cuba and what it's like, and what perception we Yankees have of it. And so, I mean, I think it's a really cool, well, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's really great to read this book in a way and see inside of Cuba and what it's like, in the sense of, where some things have seemed as if they've been stuck in time for a few decades, and where they are now, and how there is that struggle between daily life and kind of the government and all of those things that we're not used to here. Well, our government right now is a little well, a little strange, but and so for the book, it's a really great look into, or introduction into, Cuba. When we're looking at, have you written a mystery before?
No, this is my first mystery, so I really didn't even know the rules. If there are rules, I just say, let's see what happens. And I write the way I would like to read, the kind of books that I would like to read. So, if it makes sense to me, hopefully it will make sense to an editor. And I have a really good editor. And so that made the book better, I would say.
So you have 12 previous books to this. Is there anything with them that led you to writing this one? Or
my mother said, that I have kind of a fascination with death, because many of my books, in the title at least, there is la palabra muerte, like muerte de un murciano en La Habana, the death of a Murcian, not a Martian. It's not somebody from Mars, it's somebody from Murcia in Havana. And El Difunto Fidel, the late Fidel, which is not about Fidel Castro, is another Fidel. So I have always been interested in these dark topics. So maybe that was what brought me to write a mystery finally.
Yeah. The book shifts quite a bit throughout, character-wise. Is there one that you loved writing more than the others? Like when you got into writing them?
Probably my first book in Spanish, because the first book that I published was in English, was A Girl Like Che Guevara, but my first book in Spanish, Posesas de La Habana, has been the one that I have enjoyed more.
Yeah.
And I still like more, because it was a lot about my family, my grandma, my mother, all the craziness of the family, and that, that's kind of special when you write about yourself, as you know. It makes it more, it makes it closer to us.
Yeah. With this one, I was wondering too, like once you decided you were going to write the mystery, can you give, well, you said if there are rules, you were just going to write it anyways. But with this
I had to take a class to learn the rules, because I've never taken a creative writing class. I may just go and take yours.
I don't
Por
think...
cierto, ¿cuándo es? When is your class?
It'll be in the fall. I have to have my curriculum in by June 15th. And then they'll start to...
When you know exactly when we can start registering, let me know.
Okay, but I don't think there's nothing I could teach you. So, but please, you tell friends, and I'll happily do my best with them.
Vamos todos. Todos vamos a tomar tu clase.
Yeah. Well, then you took the class about mystery. What were some of those? So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, I want to write mystery, I want to write crime, what are some of the building blocks that they would have to know about before they got started?
Well, I think one important thing is to put the clues somewhere along the plot, so people, at least when they get to the end, say, I should have discovered it on my own. How was it I didn't? So that it is not a total surprise to the reader. No way that they could have gotten to that conclusion, because that can be a little bit disappointing. Of course, to place some false cues, the red herrings here and there, that also helps. I think that's kind of what I discovered while I was writing it. Hopefully that helps somebody, but mostly just write whatever you want. And have fun. It's one of those. It is one of those books, like you said. When you get to the end, you think, "Oh, I didn't see that coming," but at the same time, all those breadcrumbs were there along the way, and you think, "Oh, I saw that." And in all, even when you read the first chapter today, and I haven't read the first chapter since I read it 2 weeks ago, I saw so much in the first chapter immediately today that all played in the last chapter, or the last 3 or 4 chapters, actually, probably the fourth to the last. And and all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, there it is. And then, but the reader won't know until they get till the end. So but it's so much fun. It's like a big puzzle.
but a fun puzzle that takes you through Cuba, and you get hungry. And I fast 2 days a week, and I realized I shouldn't read this book while I'm fasting.
I know.
Because I get hungry.
Fasting fast.
even the cafe con leche, I was like, oh, that sounds really good right now. But
Cafecito con leche with sugar. No, with sugar.
Yes,
too.
with sugar. Of course, with sugar. Yeah, and you can't. I mean. In New Mexico, can you get a really good one?
No, unless I make it at home.
Yeah.
In Albuquerque, there is a Cuban restaurant. You can get it there, but I live in Hobbs.
Yeah.
So no hay restaurantes cubanos in Hobbs.
Yeah, no.
So sorry.
None here either. I don't think so. Even in Salt Lake. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, in Salt Lake.
Los Cubanos don't like to go so far away from Miami.
Well, then we need to go to Miami with the podcast and get a.
I'm going for the Miami Book Fair.
Oh, you are? Oh, man.
No, ese es el lugar para mí. That's the place for these books. Can't wait for November to be there presenting.
Yes, that'll be fantastic. When you do, are they going to have it live? We got to be able to pump it in to us. That would be so cool to see it.
I'll let you guys know for sure.
Oh, you should. Oh my gosh, you should for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nowhere in Utah can you get a really good coffee like that. I had one, a really good one, which I think is maybe close in Costa Rica, with really good coffee and really good. But you within the book, Teresa talks about it's almost like on beer. There's like of thick cream right before it even. Yeah. And
muy importante la cremita. Sí.
And it just, it's like drinking coffee butter. It's wonderful. And so I would fast on some days, and I'd read your recipes, and I'd look at my wife and I say, I think we got to end our fast right now. We got to start cooking, and we need to go.
So do you fast together?
Yeah, together,
that's a good idea.
Or we wouldn't be able to pull it off on our own.
Yeah.
We have to do everything together, or I'll be.
That's such a great idea.
Yeah.
I'll tell my viejo. Maybe you can do that.
Yeah.
It will help us to maybe shed a couple of pounds.
Oh, well, we just do it for the mental kind of, there's lots of good research on intermittent fasting and how it really helps with at the cellular level and stuff. Anyways, this is not on the book, but the coffee is.
I'm interested in the coffee.
The coffee. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. I think someday we need to drive to New Mexico, and you can make us one.
Claro que sí, of course. Come here, I'll cook arroz con pollo for you.
We're in. Brandon has a van where he does recordings for musicians. We'll just come down.
Oh, really?
We'll just come down. We'll make a trip. Yeah, lots of great writers in New Mexico.
I love this idea.
I do too.
Yeah.
Que padre.
Yeah, it would be great, wouldn't it? So with this book too, since you haven't been back since, would you say it was 96?
Well, I went back in 2000.
Oh, 2000, yeah.
Yeah, and in 98 and 2000, when my grandma was still alive, I went to visit her a couple of times. But then what happened was my mother started coming to visit me. Right. So that's why I haven't gone back.
Yeah, well, that's well. And so, like, for the portrayal of Cuba that you give in the book, is that what you would believe it was when you lived there last?
Yeah, that's a lot of what I remembered. And I asked some of my friends who lived in Cuba during that time, 2003, around, to make sure that almendrones were already circulating, and they say, the almendrones have been there since 95 or so, 98. When I left, almendrones were not that popular. Almendrones are these old American cars that have been restored, and now you see them in all the pictures of Cuba with Beyonce and that. But at that time, they were just old cars. They were not painted and beautiful, but in the late 90s, they became really popular, and now they are all over the place.
All over the place, huh? I imagined them, and I Googled them, and so that I could have have a vision of them throughout. Because of course, with the almendrones, right? I Googled them because they start from the very beginning of the book, and I wanted to know exactly what they were as we went forward with them. And I had another question in my brain, and Brandon gave me the 5 minutes, but because he keeps a tight ship here with us because we'll talk all night, you know. I had another question. It slipped out of my brain. Where did it go? Oh my gosh, it's gone. Sorry.
We're talking cars.
We were talking cars, but it was probably to do with food usually, but I don't think it has to do with food anymore.
Maybe the paladares?
Maybe. I mean, I imagine them like I imagine them like the ones in Mexico, just full of that smell of bread and sweets and dulces and all that. Yeah.
Ajá, sí, muy parecidos, yeah. Yeah, the paladares, what makes them different is that most of them are located inside people's houses.
Right, yeah.
So that's the quaint thing about it, that they are not just separated in most cases. They are like in what used to be the living room of a house. Now people have 5 or 6 tables, and that's the restaurant inside the house. And the people who are eating, the clients can see the owners, the people who live in the house, going about their businesses while they are eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really, and then they all close. Well, I almost gave a lot away. But there's a point where they close up, which we'll find throughout the book.
They did.
Yeah.
And then they came back. So that's how things are in Cuba. They were, for a while, in 2003, most private businesses were closed. Even Almendrones stopped circulating for a while, but then they came back.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah. So that kind of plays into what was happening in 2003, that part of the book, with a lot of the raids and a lot of...
Yeah, and that is all true. I mean, I even Googled that too, because I was not in Cuba when that happened, La Primavera Negra, the Black Spring. But I Googled it, and I asked some people who were there at that time, so that's where I got most of the information.
Yeah. So for those of you who are going to go out and buy the book today, which I hope all of you will, because it's really, really fun, and it's, like I said, it's beautifully written. We began the podcast with Matt and Anne coming into Cuba, and Matt planned on getting married to a young Cuban, and he finds her dead in her bathtub. And summarily, the rest of the book is trying to find out who killed her and why, what was their intent in killing her. And Matt's course throughout his time in Cuba is very, very interesting itself. I mean, and it's not completely wrapped around the mystery of who killed what he wanted to be his fiance. And then, of course, it's interwoven with a bunch of different stories along the Cuban landscape that build a really full, fun novel that I would suggest that you read really quickly. I read it quickly, which says so much. So I always like to end the podcast with asking you, as the author who how long did you spend on this one?
Between edits and rewritings, I would say like almost a year.
A year. So I always like to ask the author, and in this case, Teresa, is there anything that we're really trying to build our audience, and hopefully the audience will grow. Is there anything that you could tell our audience about your book, about yourself, that you would want them to know before this podcast ends today?
That's a very difficult question about me. I'm a curious person and Snoopy. That's how they call me around here. La Snoopy. So the book is all about snooping in people's lives, snooping in a different culture, snooping in Santeria. It has a little bit of, the Cuban voodoo thing. So the reader gets to snoop a lot into Cuban culture through the eyes of a Cuban who lived there for 30 years. And that's the best I can offer with my books. It's a trip to Cuba with a tour guide that is yo, that have been there and knows the place quite well. Yeah,
it's a beautiful book. And I'm going to ask the question that Brandon always asks.
Uh-oh.
Where can everybody find you?
There we go.
Yep, he always gets it, and I always forget it. But can we find you on the website, Facebook?
In Facebook, yes, I am in Facebook as Teresita Dovalpage, because that's my real name is Teresita. Mm-hmm. It's not Teresa. Everybody calls me Teresa here. Or I have a blog, teredovalpage.com, but mostly Facebook.
Okay. Good. And we,
Gracias.
no, I'm so glad to have you on. This 45 minutes always goes by so fast. And I kind of like
Yes,
think,
I
feel,
used to be a DJ myself. The program was about books. It was called Música y Libros, music and books, and it was bilingual. So I have fun with that. I loved interviewing authors, and it's nice to be on the other side.
Oh, I love it. Well, I have another question too. Is this one going to be available in Spanish?
Well, we are trying to sell the translation. Of course, here is the translator.
Yeah.
And so my editor is trying to sell the translation to a Spanish publisher.
Okay.
And then, of course, I will translate it.
Right. Oh,
En
of course.
La muerte entra por la cocina.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And I will try. I will buy it, and I will in Spanish. I will go through it. I will get through it, but it'll be even slower. I mean, my Spanish is.
You'll practice.
I know,
español,
practice.
Así lo practicas.
I know.
Sure,
I know.
claro.
It's been so long. We head to Mexico for a month and 3 weeks, and I need to get back into I need to start speaking again, because we go to places where they don't speak a lot of English, and so we that's always our goal, to go places
Yes,
like that.
of course.
And so
and maybe you'll go to Cuba too.
I would love to go to Cuba. I would absolutely love to go to Cuba, and now that we can, yeah. And so no, my Spanish and my mom grew up in a Spanish speaking household, but then my grandparents killed it, because my uncle he had to repeat kindergarten because of it, and so so they said no more Spanish.
Qué
so,
triste.
I know, but when my grandma got old and got sick, then she reverted to just speaking Spanish mostly. So it was well, because she had dementia, and so it went that way. So it was really interesting. So it's there. It's like it's in my blood. I just need to find it,
Claro que sí.
I try hard. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
And the book, you can get it through Soho Crime. You can get it obviously on Amazon. You can get it through Barnes & Noble. But of course, the great way to do it is get it through your independent bookstore. Go into your local independent bookstore and order through them. We need to keep our independent bookstores alive and well. And so, again, thank you so much. And we will make our way to New Mexico, just because you invited us, and
awesome.
We will.
Maravilloso.
I want coffee.
Aquí los espero. I'll be waiting for you
Oh,
here.
good.
Muchas gracias.
Oh, we'll be waiting for the time to make it happen. Again,
Qué padre.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Teresa.
This is Case Johnston. This is the Literally Podcast. Today we talked to Teresita Dovalpage about her book, Death Comes In Through the Kitchen. Pick it up. It's released in late 2017, and it's ready for you.
Gracias.
All right, thank you for listening to this podcast. This episode of Literally is sponsored by Lexicon and Line. Case, tell us a little something about Lexicon and Line.
Lexicon and Line, it does three things. They are communications consultants. They teach professional business writing and speaking courses, and they are research and data evaluation experts.
And you can find everything about Lexicon and Line at lexicononline.com. Please give them a visit, and thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast, Lexicon and Line.